Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. On the hazardous weather graphics, no advisories, warnings, or watches out for any type of wind, heavy rain, or winter conditions at all here around the state. However, there is a flood warning out along the Porcupine River due to rapid snowmelt, and that's kicked the river levels up. They came up quite rapidly and are now a little over flood stage along there. And this flood warning's out through or into Monday, tomorrow through, actually through Monday right now. I believe it was May 21st actually, is how far it's extended to. And as the water levels come downstream, there's possibility of, or at least a chance you might get some higher water levels in and around Fort Yukon. Moving on to the fire danger map, some precipitation falling up over the upper Tanana Valley today and 40 Mile Country, and that's kind of really reduced the fire danger here north of the Alaska Range. Amounts are just a few hundredths of an inch, but it was just the increase in the clouds, the light winds, and added moisture knocked it back. And this area in the Copper River Basin barely even still just barely making the category there. Had some precipitation there as well, only a hundredth of an inch at Gulkana, but then Chatina had like 1/1500ths or 2/10 of an inch. Otherwise, the area up there along the Yukon River and the Porcupine River into the northeast interior, that's still quite an area of high fire danger. And for satellite imagery today, you can see kind of a weak system, really weak low center here, and you can just make out that frontal boundary arcing out of the low right along the southeast coast there, trying to push a little bit of moisture into the area. I didn't really see any in the observations there, just some clouds. Not a bad day over the southeast coast, especially over the inside waters. Mostly cloudy, Copper River Basin. Showers again got up into Tok, scattered around Delta Junction, picked up some moisture today, and even back here along this band of clouds right there, a few scattered showers developed this afternoon. Didn't see any thunderstorms yet, but generally cloudy skies down here across south central Alaska, and wind's not too bad, although Palmer southeast gusting to 20, and that's about it. With cloudy skies, some light scattered showers along the North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound area. And you can make this weak low center right through here. You can see kind of another surge of moisture heading northwestward. That's going to keep the chance of showers in the North Gulf Coast into tonight. Otherwise, we had some there today. Not bad back out here to the west with some clearing. Looked like the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta into the Kuskokwim Valley. Partly sunny skies in areas. Showers along that band of clouds, that narrow band of clouds here in the central interior, and a few showers back up to the northwest, a little bit more widespread out here with that low center toward the northwest coast. Otherwise, fog, low clouds, areas of Bering Sea, northern Bering Sea through the Strait, as well as the Arctic coast there. Winds coming down on the Arctic coast slowly, still gusting to 35 miles an hour this afternoon at Point Thompson Airstrip, but otherwise about 25 to 35 or 20 to 35, less than yesterday, and they'll continue to edge their way down. Out to the west, not a lot going on yet. Just a couple of weak troughs with some light rain, fog, and drizzle crossing the Pribilof Islands, extending down to the Alaska Peninsula. A few showers earlier today around Alaska, really no organized system. It's kind of the remnants of what was a weak system. Weak trough in the north there, low clouds and fog, another trough coming southeastward. Very weak though, really not much going on. But you can see on the edge of the picture, clouds right there. That's the outer cloud shield, and the next system will try to push in. Coming onto the chart here for tonight, still west of Shemya, wait until tomorrow, or take until tomorrow. Otherwise, ridging in across the Aleutians and actually all the way up into the Russian Far East there. Make for a light wind, cloudy, occasionally foggy time for the Bering Sea. with drizzle, rain, and fog here. Again, the Pribilofs tonight, and then this shifting in the Alaska Peninsula to that weak trough. Showers here scattered in the interior, along with clearing scattered around. And basically, though, dry conditions, most areas, especially eastern interior, starting to clear out a little tonight. Might be a little fast on that, drawing that sand trap in there. But the showers will definitely be tapering off, with southeast flow continuing and that low kind of backing to the west here. That's going to keep it cloudy and occasionally damp along the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula from Kodiak Island all the way up over to Cape Yakataga into possibly maybe Elfin Cove. I don't think too much, if anything, is going to get into the southeast coast. You might have a shower at some time tonight, probably this evening at Skagway. Otherwise, partly to mostly cloudy skies with light winds. And for Sunday, about the same down there. Chance of showers on the north coast. Otherwise, chance of sunshine over the inside water areas of the Panhandle, including Juneau, Haines, and over Petersburg, Wrangell. Definitely down the southern areas there, with the any showers that form will probably stay east of Stewart. And the risk of a thunderstorm up here. If there's enough moisture to pump one up there, there is a risk of a thunderstorm there over the, looks like just north of Fairbanks, the White Mountains there, and then back down over the southwest interior in the lower Yukon and Kuskokwim River Valley areas. Isolated showers up here, looks like over the Kobuk Valley roughly, and then sunshine back to the west, at least partly sunny skies. Low clouds and fog bearing straight St. Lawrence Island, wrap around the Arctic coast. And high pressure still dominating the Bering Sea here. Weak trough coming through that ridge. So cloudy, maybe some drizzle, light winds, Pribilof. Same thing for the eastern Aleutians, Bristol Bay. And this front finally trying to push into the western Bering there will bring a little bit of an increase in a breeze to Shimei and Attu and a better chance for rain. Otherwise, got a trough here, keeping it wet along the North Gulf Coast. And into Monday, still a risk of some showers here. Western Prince William Sound on down to maybe Seward along the southern coast there, and that's about it. Otherwise drying out, maybe possibly clearing out areas from Cordova to Yakutat, and better chance of some sunshine in the Copper River Basin. Interior here, pretty nice. Afternoon showers and maybe a few thunderstorms triggered as temperatures rise into the mid to upper 70s over the eastern interior. And dry over the northern southeast coast. The southern areas have a little bit of moisture sneaking in for some shower chances. Annette, Metlakatla, Ketchikan, Klawock, Heidelberg, those areas, Craig, while the areas to the north will be mostly, hopefully mostly sunny. That system out west pushes eastward now, finally busting into the Aleutians, but it's very weak. You can see not much of a gradient at all with it. Warm front type weather, low clouds, fog, and drizzle will extend all the way to False Pass, maybe Cold Bay in the afternoon, with the low center hanging back just west of Adak. Low temperatures tonight out in the Aleutians, upper 30s, lower 30s for the Pribilofs, and near 30 for St. Lawrence Island. Otherwise in the 40s here, north of the mountains, and upper 30s, lower 40s. South of the Alaska Range, in the 40s for the Panhandle, mid to upper 20s in the Arctic coast. And your highs for tomorrow afternoon, 70 to 75 here, roughly from the central interior there at Tanana, eastward toward the border, 70 to 75 into the upper Yukon Valley as well down to Tok, and mid-60s, give or take there for the central Copper River Basin, and also lower to mid-60s, maybe 66, 67 here in the Susitna Valley tomorrow, maybe the Matanuska Valley. Otherwise, the southeast coast here, range from 73 forecast high at Skagway to 61 at Sitka, and then 67 or upper 60s to near 70 down to the south. High of 50 forecast for Kodiak, and mid-30s up there on the Arctic coast. And your lows for Monday morning, a little higher, upper 20s for the most part along the Arctic coast there, hitting the lower 30s from Point Lay, then above freezing by the time you get to around the bend there to Kivalina. Otherwise mid to upper 40s in the interior, and lower to mid 40s south of the mountains. And then back down upper 30s, lower 40s for the Aleutians, along the west coast mid 30s, and 40s for the southeast coast. Highs 75 to 82, I'd call it. Best chance of seeing 80 broke would be, or hit would be over here on the eastern border, and could have 70s extending back a fair ways to the west to 60 near Bethel.
And now, Aviation weather around Alaska.
A swath of IFR extending from the western Aleutians here up to the northeast, all the way to the Seward Peninsula there, catching Savunga and St. Lawrence Island, and then up through the Bering Strait, northwest coast. And starting the day out tomorrow, IFR for Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast, and basically VFR in the interior, except for this narrow band of marginal conditions. Prince William Sound up to the Koyukuk Valley. Marginal VFR Cook Inlet in toward the Kuskokwim Valley, definitely Bristol Bay, and IFR, Southern Kenai Peninsula, southeastward. You can see even the marginal VFR staying along or just off the coast of the Panhandle, so VFR there right up in the eastern interior. And for tomorrow afternoon, VFR across the southeast coast continues, but IFR kind of nudges up across Yakutat and extends back along the coastline all the way down to the east side of Kodiak there. Marginal VFR, Bristol Bay. Good VFR over the interior. Possible thunderstorms isolated right along this zone. And IFR, North Slope Arctic Coast, marginal to the north side of the Brooks Range there. And out here in the Bering Sea, just a big chunk of IFR there, kind of north of Adak and Atka a little bit, but into Shimia, across the Pribilofs, down to the Bering Sea side of the peninsula and Fox Islands. And for Monday morning, VFR in the interior, IFR, North Slope out to the Arctic coast, or actually the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, IFR, Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, and then down along the Panhandle here with IFR up along the eastern slopes of the Western Alaska Range, and a little bit of marginal VFR, mainly over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, lesser extent over Bristol Bay, marginal VFR for Atka to Nikolsky. And Monday afternoon, still had thunderstorm risk right through here in the interior, and still IFR up over the north slope to the Arctic coast, with IFR in a narrow band coming down through the Bering Strait, but lots of lower flying conditions here in the forecast right along the southwest coast. Cape Newinam, definitely Nunivak Island, Pribilofs, all the way back to the western and central Aleutians, and otherwise pretty good VFR here in the interior as well as the southeast coast. Marginal VFR, most of the Kenai Peninsula down south and southern Cook Inlet. And for passes tomorrow, VFR for Adigan and Anatuvik, with VFR conditions trending toward marginal VFR in the afternoon, some moisture coming in, Lake Clark and Merrill, but rainy. We'll see an increase in the clouds tomorrow afternoon, but it'll stay VFR. And for windy, VFR, another VFR day for Isabel and Mentasta, as well as Tanita, looking good with VFR flying. And Portage, though, probably going marginal later tonight, and that holding through the day tomorrow with increasing chances of IFR, probably during the morning hours tomorrow on the eastern entrance. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Looking at the freezing level chart here, we've got 6,000 feet coming down out of the Arctic, right across the central Arctic coast into the Alaska Range there, and then kind of slips over to the east and then drops down along and off the coast of the Panhandle. Otherwise, 4,000 to 5,000 feet here, or 6,000 sloping to 4,000 out toward the southwest coast, and then northward there, 2,000 feet, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula. Kind of a cool swath right through here, 2,000 feet or less, Aleutians up to St. Lawrence Island. Then it warms up again back over the western Aleutians. And as far as icing goes, we've got a front coming in there out west system, and that'll bring a chance of some light to isolated moderate rime icing into just Shimmy and Attu. Otherwise, the Bering Sea icing free, the interior icing free. And moisture here just grazing the Panhandle. Really looks like Port Alexander on up to Elfin Cove, Yakutat, those areas, Sitka. Just a slight chance of some icing there of the light variety, light rime. And then that extends across the Gulf of Alaska with that moisture flowing right into Kodiak Island, southern Kenai Peninsula into Kamishak Bay. Again, a chance of some light to isolated moderate rime icing. And for the jet stream here, well to the south, got several lows keep rolling into California, and one does tomorrow, so that keeping the jet way down there, but it kind of splits here around this low south-southeast of Kodiak Island, so we got 70-knot winds sailing up across the southeast coast, falling back to about 50 knots over the interior. And a weak low out there over the Bering Sea, slowly kind of sliding south-southeast with 60-knot winds on the western quadrant of that system. Looking at the 9,000-foot wind flow chart here, 25 or 20 to 25-knot winds. Not too strong here, coming around that low from the Pribilofs down to the eastern Aleutians. Lighter to the west, and then beginning to increase about 25, shimmying at 2 in the afternoon. But could see maybe up to possibly 40 knots here on the southeast coast. Of course, that's 9,000 feet, and that's probably pulled back a little bit farther off the coast there. Otherwise, you're looking at more 15 to 20 knots, and then up over the southern interior, pretty light, just 10 to 15. 3,000 feet, about the same pattern, 25-knot winds here right along or off the coast, 5 knots inland, 5 to 15 over the interior, but 25 to 30 coming across the Gulf of Alaska, Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay. And then light winds out of the northwest, 10 to 15 for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, picking up to 20 for shimmying at 2. And for turbulence, light to isolated moderate chop, Prince William Sound, Kodiak Island, including the Kenai Peninsula, on over to about King Salmon.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, joined once again by the science liaison of GINA, Eric Stevens. GINA, of course, is the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And GINA is all about satellites, and Eric is always here to tell some really cool stuff about satellites. Now, the last time you were here, we talked about how the weather satellites can see clouds and what's under the clouds, but you're telling me that satellites can do a lot more, even protect the general public with aviation safety information.
That's right. There's one particular aspect of satellites we're going to talk about today that might not be immediately obvious, and that is detecting things in the atmosphere that are not clouds, that are not snow, not rain, but rather a hazard that can happen here in Alaska, and that is volcanic ash.
Of course.
When a volcano goes off, puts ash in the air, this is of course a hazard to the public if the ash were to fall on the ground in accumulating amounts.
Sure.
Additionally, while the ash is in the air, and this is the more frequent hazard, is it's a hazard to aviation because you cannot fly an airplane into volcanic ash without great risk. Worst case scenario, the ash gets into a jet engine, wrecks the engine, kills the engine, and now you have an airplane flying with no engines. It won't fly for long. So aviators need to avoid that ash. How do you avoid the ash? You have to know where it is by identifying it with a satellite image and perhaps predicting then where the ash will flow with the overall weather patterns. Satellites are so important for identifying when a volcano goes off and then tracking the ash after the volcano injects the ash into the atmosphere.
Now, are you talking about seeing the heat signature or a huge volcanic plume with a cloud that we're used to seeing in the really pretty pictures of any Alaska volcano that's erupted recently, Redoubt, for example? Or are we talking about the really fine details? Because this is polar orbiting satellites, the ones that are very low to the ground, right?
The geostationary satellites can do some detection. The polar orbiters, like you say, they're closer to the Earth. They give the even better view. In answer to your question, I would say all of the above.
Oh, okay.
A heat signature from a volcano going off with all the heat that comes with the eruption, that can be identified in infrared imagery.
Okay.
We've got images from the Kamchatka Peninsula. That's the far eastern part of Russia on the western side of the Bering Sea, loaded with volcanoes.
Right.
You know, Alaska has plenty of volcanoes of its own. We can also be affected when a volcano goes off in Kamchatka, say, and then the weather carries that ash toward Alaska from the west.
Right.
You can see the infrared heat signature, like you say. Also, the ash in the air can be detected by doing some sophisticated channel differencing within the satellite data. You can find the identification of sulfur dioxide, say, that's a component of the volcanic emission, and you can trace this with the satellite imagery. Sometimes volcanoes go off that haven't gone off before, and we're not expecting them to go off. Say if there's no seismometers around a given volcano that hasn't gone off in 100 years, you might not be expecting it to go off in the satellite imagery. Since satellites can be globally comprehensive, that might be the first sign that you have that a volcano in an unexpected area is going off.
So it's a good backup system. Okay.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And people are working all the time on automating the interrogation of satellite data by computers to provide a first alert to a human, so the software will say, we think this might be important. Human, go take a closer look. Because the people are still the best way to interrogate the imagery, but the planet's a big place, and we can't be looking everywhere all the time, so the software helps give a first cut. And then in Alaska, there's a special kind of surprise angle where the satellites are helpful, and that is the Katmai eruption of 1912. Huge eruption. There is still somewhat of a moonscape out there in southwest Alaska where all this ash is laying on the ground. And sometimes a strong weather pattern comes along where we have roaring northwest winds that go across the Alaska Peninsula there and can actually pick some of this ash up off the ground. No volcano is going off. This was more than 100 years ago that volcano actually blew. So you're not going to see a heat signature like we were discussing. There will be no seismic signature of a volcano going off. So those data sets, they'll say, oh, no problem. But you can see in some of the satellite imagery this ash, as it's called, resuspended. When the wind comes along, picks it up, the ash can be lofted a few thousand feet in the air just with the wind. And an airplane flying into that plume is exposed to some danger. So we need to track that ash to provide guidance to aviators that you don't want to be flying here at these elevations in this area. We've got some imagery of the resuspension, and you can see the wind blowing strongly from the northwest, picking up the ash and blowing it down to the southeast. And so that's another, perhaps not immediately obvious hazard of volcanic ash. Katmai is the gift that keeps on giving, for sure.
Very good. So we've got satellites that can help us understand the weather from the past and the immediate past, and we talked last time about how that's feeding into the forecast modeling to help improve predictions, but now they're also protecting the general public with aviation sensitive information and watching volcanoes, whether they're erupting or maybe have erupted in the past, and finding the left behinds from those volcanic events there. So really impressive stuff. Eric, thanks so much for joining us again today, and you're a gift that keeps on giving from the satellite community, so thanks a lot, and we hope to have you back again soon. Again, Eric Stevens with Dehne at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And if you'd like to check out any of the information that Eric has shared with us again today, you can do that very easily by going to www.dehne.alaska.edu. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Today's sea ice analysis showing really not a lot of change from yesterday. Still south of the strait, we have this little bit of ice here from the north side of St. Lawrence Island back up onto the coast there. Looking pretty clear through the Bering Strait here, and even clearer north of the strait. This area continuing to grow, and we'll slowly do that for the next several days. And coastal water forecast south to southeast, 10 knots, 7-foot seas. Pretty light winds even over the inside water, southeast at about 10, and you could call 15 knots, I guess, a breeze there in Lynn Canal with 3-foot seas. And then light variable winds here for the inside waters on Monday, north 15 out along the coast, seas running 3 to 5 feet, or no, 5 feet the entire stretch of the way. And for Cook Inlet, north winds 20 knots north of the Forelands, and we got small craft advisories for southern Cook Inlet that'll extend and turn northeast into Kamishak Bay. East, 25 knots. Barren Islands, western North Gulf Coast, about 20 knots on the eastern coast there near Middleton Island. Northeast 15 for Prince William Sound, 3-foot seas. East 25 for the Sound on Monday with 6-foot seas. Otherwise out in the Gulf there, south at 20, North Gulf Coast. Southeast 15, lighter winds back to the west. And lighter winds also for the Barren, southeast 20 and east 20 for Kamishak Bay. Cook Inlet, northeast 15, 3-foot seas. And for the Alaska Peninsula, north at 15 tomorrow, north 15 for Bristol Bay, southwest of Sitkinak to about Castle Cape, north winds 20 knots, northeast 20 on the east side of Kodiak, and 25 knots, the strongest winds there, Shelikof Strait with 8-foot seas. But those fall back to 10 knots on Monday, south 15 here for those eastern marine zones on Kodiak, and west 15 across the Alaska Peninsula, back to the light winds, 3 to 6-foot seas, and even lighter winds for Bristol Bay. And the eastern Aleutians, north to northwest, 15 to maybe as high as 20 knots. That would be more around Nikolsky. Otherwise, light winds for the central Aleutians, light winds for the western Aleutians, coming up to southwest, maybe 20 towards Shimei and Attu due to that weak front pushing eastward. And then for the next day, low pressure here pulling in, so that probably kicked the winds up to 25 knots in and around the low center there. And advance to the front, maybe 20-25 out of the south. That's about it. Really nothing too serious. And 15 to 20 knot winds for the Fox Islands. Southwest coast, north 10 to 15 knots. Pretty light winds also for the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island, with St. Lawrence Island north at about 15. Same forecast for Norton Sound. And moving on to Monday, no change there for Norton Sound. Pick it up a little bit here, add 5 knots, north 20 for St. Lawrence Island, and down along the Yukon Delta coast, and then 15 knots blow into the Kuskokwim Bay area on Monday with 3-foot seas. Light winds for the Pribilofs, northeast 20, St. Matthew Island. Up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast there, we've got east winds at 15 with, so continuing downward trend, 15-knot winds central and east side, light variable 10-knot winds here everywhere else. And for Monday, those pick up from Wales to Cape Beaufort, north to northeast at 20, and pull up to 15 there for the western coast, and lightest along the central coast, still at 10 knots, and 15 knots for the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline. And for tonight, not too bad over the interior. A few scattered showers along this weak trough in here, either side of it or along it, up to the northeast, but probably not getting too far more east than this. Look for the skies to start to clear with the showers ending here for the eastern interior. Still a chance of moisture for the North Gulf Coast. I think it'll stay off the coast of the Panhandle, which tomorrow, risk of some showers from Sitka up to Yakutat. Otherwise, partly sunny elsewhere in the Panhandle with light winds. Copper River Basin, afternoon showers and isolated thunderstorms up in the upper Tanana Valley area, with temperatures rising into the lower to mid 70s. Risk of thunderstorms back into the lower Kuskokwim, Yukon River Valley areas. And then for Monday, kind of a thermal low feature setting up here with temperatures running anywhere from 75 to 80 for the highs, warmest toward the eastern interior. That could trigger some afternoon thunderstorms early evening up there. And actually that same pattern could extend down this trough into along the Yukon River there. Showers northern Bristol Bay, and just a risk of some showers with partly sunny skies south central Alaska, Matanuska Valley. And the Copper River Basin looking good. Chance of showers down over the southern southeast coast, and some light rain with that system pulling eastward here. Actually extends all across the Aleutians. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.